Welcome to episode 4 of the Burt and Urbin show, where we talk about a lot of football and then just a little bit more football. I am Nick Burt. He is Zach Urbin. You'll see him when he decides to talk because we are on Zoom. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right myself. How are you doing, Burt?
Well, I'm doing okay. Gonna survive, maybe.
Yes.
Um, let's start off with a look back at last week's NFL action. What are some games that interested you the most coming out of last week?
I think the big one for me heading into last weekend was that Buccaneers Rams game. And that one definitely did not disappoint. That was a fun game to watch. I thought that Rams offense truly looked unstoppable. Stafford had like 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, just on the money. And the Bucs really just couldn't get it going or get a stop against the Rams offense. So yeah, that one was very telling for me.
And you know what's interesting about that game? The Buccaneers had more total yards, total passing yards, and total yards and total passing yards compared to the Rams. Yet they still looked like not that good.
Yeah.
I think that was like a big takeaway from that game is the Rams can get it done, but without as many yards as the other team needs.
Yeah, exactly. Brady had a really good game. His stats were great, but the rest of the team around him just did not play up to par.
Yeah, one of the games I took away from this weekend was from last weekend was the Packers 49ers game on Sunday Night Football. Just a amazing finish. The Packers won 30-28. You had Aaron Rodgers get the ball with like 27 seconds left or something like that. Just another outstanding game. That was kind of like a revenge game type thing for Aaron Rodgers, since he is from the Bay Area and he maybe wanted to go to the 49ers this past offseason. But that was just a very well played game for both teams.
Yeah. And my biggest takeaway from that game is how much time is too little time for Aaron Rodgers. When you look at what he's done in his career, I mean, this game, you give him 30 seconds and no timeouts, and he's able to get it done. I don't think there are 3 people in the NFL, 3 quarterbacks in the NFL who could do that. It is a very limited amount of guys who can possibly do that. So the question is, how much time is too little time? And I think something got recommended in my YouTube watch list. It was a video of Aaron Rodgers, teams giving Aaron Rodgers the ball back with too much time. And it was a 12-minute long video. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is proving to be probably a top 3 quarterback in the league, even at his age. There were a lot of questions if like he was still in it or whatever after this offseason, but I think he's fully proved that he's back to his MVP type season self. And he's all in on the Packers. I think that is another big takeaway from that game because you don't really take much away from that Lions game because it is the Lions. And with the way that he played against the 49ers, who are probably competing for the NFC West, just like every other team in the division, I think that was a big win for him.
Yeah, I agree that. I think that was his first kind of true showing this season of him being prime again. So that was a big win for them.
Yeah, another game where the opposing team gave the quarterback too much time was the Lions Ravens game. I know you don't really want to talk about this one, but the Ravens win 19-17 on Justin Tucker's 66-yard field goal. Um, that was just that field goal, man, that even was sad for me, and I'm not even a Lions fan.
Yeah, that was truly heartbreak. Uh, talk about false hope right there. But so Justin Tucker gets the NFL record kick now. He doinked off the bottom bar, bounced in. It was funny because you could see all the fans in the crowd. They thought it wasn't going in once it hit the crossbar, and then it bounced over, and they're all like, "No!" But yeah, Lamar Jackson had all day on fourth down. I mean, he had what, probably 8 seconds to throw that football. And of course, he's going to find someone against this not so great Lions defense, who actually had a very good game against the Ravens, limited them very well. Um, I mean, up until that field goal, they only had 16 points. That's pretty good against the Ravens. Um, so, and then that delay game, you know, that's the type of thing that usually happens to the Lions. And once again, the NFL is apologizing for it. But I don't know. As a Lions fan, you just kind of learn to live with it. It happens.
Yeah, I think another key takeaway from that game was that Hollywood Brown had like three potential touchdown catches, and he dropped all of them. This game could have been a blowout, but the Lions like stuck in there. And obviously the key was that they gave Lamar way too much time in on that fourth down because like you said, he had like 8 to 10 seconds to throw it. You got to pressure him in that situation, make him get the ball out quick because I mean, I thought that was the game right there. I thought they were going to end up getting him or pressuring him enough where the ball gets thrown away or a bad throw. But obviously that did not happen. And then the delay of game, I mean, it is something that would happen to Lions. Like I said to you earlier in the week, I would like to see like an actual camera of uh the play clock in the
Yeah.
stadium because sometimes the clock is off on TV. I'm sure it's close-ish, but yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it's a usual course for the Lions. They get a bad call at least once a year. The NFL apologizes and nothing gets done about it.
Exactly. Yeah, that I also wanted to see the stadium clock, but because of the NFL actually apologizing over it, I think that it was actually right on screen. So that means like they were given 2 extra seconds after it hit zero. So I don't know. This team isn't anything great, but it does show promise that they can compete, which they've done all season, mind you. And I think this is definitely turning a corner to possibly build something new around here, something different. So,
Yeah, I mean, the Lions have been in every game this season. They've just come out on the bad end of the game each time. You look back at the 49ers game, they were down big and they had that huge comeback at the end. And I mean, they were close to tying it. They were in the Packers game in the first half. I mean, obviously things fell apart when the rain came in the second half. And then this game, they played really well, especially against a Ravens team that is maybe competing for an AFC title. But I'm also not surprised that the Lions were in this game because, like I said on last week's episode, I said this is a game that the Lions like probably would win just be for no reason at all. Like the Ravens are gonna walk in and be a little sleepy from the previous week's game against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't really see anything in that game that made me think that the Ravens were AFC contenders. But I mean, it is what it is, basically.
Yeah. All right. Now we will do a quick rundown because most of the other games were not as noteworthy as those first ones. So first of all, Chargers beat the Chiefs 30-24. My thoughts on this are I think people may have figured out how to beat the Chiefs now. What are your thoughts on this game?
Um, like you said, I think people may have figured out how to beat the Chiefs. I do think the Chargers are real contenders for the AFC West. Um, yeah, I mean, that was a great game to watch also.
Yeah, I would happen to agree. All right, next up, Browns at the Bears. Browns win big 26-6. This Browns defense finally had its first game where it looked like the Browns defense that is supposed to be there. What do you think?
I don't really know if it's the Browns defense living up to the hype or the Bears O line being that bad, because by the fourth quarter they were just like letting Myles Garrett walk through. So it was a good win for the Browns though. Really happy. 2-1 on the season now. Uh yeah.
All right, I'd happen to agree. Next up, a not so great game, but a spectacular play. Cardinals beat the Jaguars 31-19. First of all, this Cardinals team is kind of a surprise. But then second of all, was Jamal Agnew's uh, kick return for 109 yards. Was that the play of the year? I mean, it's early on, but what a play.
It's a play of the year as much as every game from each week is the game of the year. That's not decided until the end of the season. It is definitely a contender, though. It was just a spectacular play. Gus Johnson on the call just made it even better. Yeah.
All right. Next up, Bills have a dominant performance against the Washington football team. They win 43-21. This Bills team, despite a bad start against the Steelers week 1, looked very good. And I know it's the Washington football team who last year was competing with the Buccaneers in the playoffs. Does this game have meaning?
I mean, every game has meaning in the NFL. It's just, I mean, obviously some mean more than others. Uh, this is not one of those. Um, I don't really take much away from that. The Bills did look really good, but the football team, I mean, they don't look as good as they were last year. And I mean, they weren't that great last year, but I think the Bills are still one of the teams to beat in the AFC, even though they lost week 1 against the Steelers. I kind of think that was just a week 1 type game that they had.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on that. Now, jumping to a team we were just talking about in that game, the Steelers lose to the Bengals 24-10. Big Ben and the Steelers offense did not look good in this one. And that's what the national media is hounding the Steelers right now. What do you think is wrong with this offense?
It's obviously number 7. He needed to retire like a year ago. He cannot move. You know, he went on the TB12 diet over the off season, and he does look thinner, but he looks so bad. He either when he gets the ball after a snap, he either throws it away immediately or holds on to it for what seems like an eternity. And he doesn't even throw the ball like downfield. He needs to retire, but as a Browns fan, he can stay as long as he wants.
Exactly. He definitely has regressed this season. So that's something to watch out for. And finally, for our last rundown, Cowboys beat the Eagles on Monday Night Football 41-21. This Cowboys offense looked very good. So, are they truly winning the NFC East?
I mean, I don't really see another team that looks that good in the East right now, so it's hard to say no to that question. Obviously, Cowboys Nation will think that they're back and are winning the Super Bowl this year, but I'm still not 100% convinced on them. I think they need to play because the Eagles did not look good at all, like at all. So I think the Cowboys need to play some decent competition first. I mean, they did play the Buccaneers close and they played the Chargers close. Two of what I think are the better teams in the NFL. So I mean, maybe they are good. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the true telling for me is not the offense, but the defense. Because coming off last year, that defense looked very bad, and it looks improved so far. But if it can hold its ground, I think that'll be the key for them winning the NFC East.
Let's move on to this weekend. Let's check out the Saturday slate for college football. Let's start off with the game that College Game Day is at this morning. It is Arkansas at Georgia. Georgia is a 16-point favorite. This Arkansas team's coming off a big win against Texas A&M. They're in the top 10 for like the first time in like forever. But this Georgia team, I mean, they're good, but with the way that Clemson has obviously very digressed, over this year, you got to wonder, how did Georgia only score 10 points against that team?
Yeah, and I think when you look at this game, my focus rather goes to how well Arkansas played against Texas A&M. But I think this will be a trap game for Georgia. I do not think that they will just be able to breeze past Arkansas. This Arkansas defense, very good. So I'm very excited to watch for the outcome of this one.
I mean, we'll see. It's just I think this number is way too big. So I would take the Arkansas plus 16. I do think Arkansas will play Georgia closer, but it is at Georgia, so that could be a big effect.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would take Arkansas for the points.
Let's move on to another game in the 12 o'clock window. This one is the big noon Saturday game. Michigan going on the road to Camp Randall versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a 2.5-point favorite. Yeah, I'm not so sure what to think about this one. Michigan runs the ball a lot, like a lot. Wisconsin obviously had the loss last week to Notre Dame, but that score line is not indicative of how the game was played. I mean, that game was like 13-10 going into the fourth quarter. I think things just unraveled in the fourth for the Wisconsin team. But I mean, this game, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because Wisconsin has a very good run blocking defense.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this matchup, especially because Michigan came off of a struggle week last week. That was a very close game, and I think this one will be even more of a competition for Michigan. So to see how well this Wisconsin defense plays against a very strong Michigan run attack should be an interesting one to watch, especially for this noon slate.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the more interesting games of the weekend. It is the 2:30 game on NBC. Cincinnati going on the road to Notre Dame. Cincinnati, a 1-point favorite. this is a very, very telling game for the Bearcats if they want to make a push at the college football playoff, which kind of seem wide open right now.
Yeah, no team besides Alabama has really presented themselves as the dominant force to be in the playoff. I think Georgia's right there. There are a few teams kind of lurking there, but it's not definitive like it has many years. So for this one, I'm also curious. I still don't feel like I have a good grasp on what this Notre Dame team truly is. I am all over the place with them. So in this one, I think I would take Cincinnati. But once again, this Notre Dame team, it's a different team that shows up week to week. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean that I think that's going to be one of the big keys of the game of which Notre Dame team shows up to this game. Uh Obviously they almost lost in overtime to what is now looking like a very bad Florida State team. They almost lost to Toledo, but then they blew out Purdue and they technically by the score line they blew out Wisconsin, even though like we said just a few minutes ago that score line was not indicative of how that game played out. um but for Cincinnati, we saw week 3, I believe, when they played Indiana. They were played really close in that game, and then they just pulled away. So they faced adversity and fought back. So it will be really interesting to see how this game plays out for the Bearcats and the Irish.
Yeah, I think this is the game that I'm most looking forward to this weekend. This is truly telling for both teams, so I'm excited.
Another big game on the weekend slate. It's not as big as some of the other ones, but Ohio State going on the road to Rutgers. Ohio State's a 15.5 point favorite. Um, Ohio State just has not looked themselves this year. I mean, last week they did play Akron, and they did blow them out by a fairly decent amount. But Akron is one of the worst teams in college football. Rutgers coming off of almost beating Michigan. I think this game is going to be really close.
Yeah, I could definitely see Rutgers playing tough against this Ohio State team who has been struggling somewhat this season. Ohio State doesn't really have a true identity yet. And this Rutgers team against Michigan, they truly limited what that Michigan offense could do. And because Ohio State also had, excuse me, because Ohio State has also been struggling on the offensive side of the ball, I think this Rutgers defense could definitely keep this game close.
There's not really big home field advantage when Rutgers plays in Piscataway, but since they are starting to look better, I do think that will start changing and it will be a raucous environment for any opponent. We will see how Ohio State comes out though, because like you said, they really haven't found an identity yet. So it will be interesting to see if they can finally find that. Moving on to what might be a game of the weekend. Ole Miss going on the road to Alabama. Ole Miss is 14.5 point underdog. This game has an over under of 80.5. I believe I saw somewhere that this is like the largest over under in either SEC or college football history. That is a gigantic number. I don't really know if the offenses will really be played out that much. I think this will be more of a not so much of a defensive battle, but I do think defense will be a bigger factor than people are thinking.
I don't understand why the over under is so massive. I guess they're expecting a shootout, But this Alabama defense, everyone's talking about Bryce Young in the offense. This Alabama defense is probably one of the best it's been in years. I just don't think Mississippi will be able to hang around with Alabama, to be completely honest. I would take the under, and I think I would take Alabama in the point spread.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama's Alabama. They will always give it their best, basically. I don't know if Lane Kiffin's team is at that level yet. Um, I also think that Alabama will probably cover the 14 and a half. I don't really know if this game's going to be that close. So I'm not totally sold on the over. I mean, I could see it maybe happening, but I I'm not sold on it. Moving on to another game. This one is in the 7:30 window. Boston College going on the road to Clemson. Boston College is surprisingly the undefeated team in this matchup. Clemson is somehow still ranked. Clemson does not look good this season.
No, and without Trevor Lawrence, it looks to be that he was their definition. He was their game plan. And now that they don't have a surefire first overall pick at quarterback, things are just not looking good. They have not been able to score the football. And it really shocks me that they are able to still be ranked right now. I think I would still take Clemson in this game, but I think it very well could be a close matchup.
Yeah, I definitely think this will be a closer matchup than the 14 and a half point spread. That number is, it's almost begging people to take Boston College for free money, but those are the exact games where Clemson just goes out and beats them like 49 to nothing. That game is just, it's one of those very questionable games. Like, it's basically, can Clemson get up off the mat after being like basically punched down, and they're basically out of the playoffs now. They're not going to make it unless like something very, very wild happens, which I mean, it could. You never know. But
Yeah, for sure. I think they're definitely out at this point.
yeah, they still have everything to fight for to win the ACC title, though. The ACC is not a good conference. But if Boston College does win this game, I mean, they got to be contenders to win the ACC, I think.
Yeah, they definitely could be. This is good. This is a big game for Boston College.
Yeah. Let's move on to another game in the 7:30 window. It is Western Kentucky going on the road to face Michigan State. Michigan State's an 11 point favorite. We were both at the Michigan State Nebraska game last weekend. That second half for Michigan State was just atrocious, but I think it does show that Michigan State can still pull out wins even in the most ugly of fashions.
Yeah, Michigan State truly did not look good last week. I mean, they came out, they had what, 20 yards of offense in the second half or something like that, and no first downs. The punt return really kept them in the game. And then they were able to pull out in overtime. They were able to make some big plays and kick the field goal to win that one, but they really should not have won that one. They played sloppy. That offense did not look good, especially coming off of games where they looked unstoppable. I expect this one to be a bounce back for Michigan State. I think bettors keep thinking this one's going to kind of be a blowout. The spread keeps getting larger. I think last week it was at 8 or something like that. Now it's to 11. So I expect Michigan State to thoroughly handle Western Kentucky.
One other thing I wanted to mention from last week's game is Michigan State's defense against Nebraska's quarterback Martinez. Michigan State's defense just had no answer whenever he decided to start scrambling. I feel like that might become a problem for them this weekend because Western Kentucky's quarterback Bailey Zapp, he's another one of those quarterbacks that can just start scrambling out of nowhere and make something out of nothing. And if Michigan State if they couldn't find an answer last week, it will be interesting to see if they can find out an answer this week, because I feel like it's almost a very similar quarterback style play coming from Western Kentucky.
Yeah, I think he definitely has the potential to give this defense fits. However, State has film now to watch back and learn from this game, from the Nebraska game, to learn how to defend a scrambling quarterback like that. This coaching staff, I'm sure, will prepare them to stay diligent, stay home, contain, which are all things that they did not do against Nebraska. I think they probably bounce back, and I think they do contain him, but there is definitely a potential that maybe maybe the Michigan State defense just cannot handle the run that well.
Yeah, this is going to be a telling week for that defense if they can stop Zapp. I want to move on to the game of the year, game of the decade, game of the century, game of the millennium. This is the greatest game of football history. UConn going on the road to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a 14.5-point favorite. The current rate for a ticket on third-party sites is $1. That is 4 quarters. That's 100 pennies. This is the game of all games. Two of the most worst teams in football. We will leave it at that.
I would just like to point out, if you went to a concert in like the 60s or 70s, you probably paid more for a ticket than you would for this game. So yeah.
This is the game of all time. I'm kind of disappointed that we won't be able to watch all 4 quarters because the Michigan State game is at the same time. But this game has all the makings for either the greatest football game of all time or the worst football game of all time.
Yeah, this one will be a true thriller. I think everyone will be talking about it Sunday. I mean, it's going to have everyone on the edge of their seat. And I can't wait to see how much of a cultural impact this has on everyone.
Yeah, you look at the games throughout history. You obviously have the first ever game in history between Rutgers and Princeton. You have the first Rose Bowl between Michigan and Stanford. You have just some monumental games. You have the 1966 game, the Michigan State Notre Dame game that ended in a 10-10 tie. This game is going to go right up on that list with those monumental games in history.
Yes, it should be right up there.
Yeah, that one is going to be an entertaining game to watch. One more game I wanted to look at for this weekend. It is an 11 o'clock kickoff on the islands, Fresno State versus Hawai'i. Fresno State's an 11-point favorite. But I think the thing here is Fresno State could come in like sleepwalking into this game and Hawai'i can just catch you like that.
Yeah, I very well could see that happen. Especially, you got to factor in this time difference. I mean, Fresno State is probably not used to that. This game will feel very weird to them. So I probably think Fresno State wins. I don't really have an opinion on either team. However, it is always fun to watch Hawaii football at 11 p.m. at night. And I would leave that at that.
I completely agree with that. Let's take just one quick recap of a game from last night, the Iowa Maryland game. The only thing I really have to say from that one is it seems like this happens to Maryland every year. The calendar turns to October. They usually have a Friday night home game against a highly ranked team. They usually come in undefeated, and they get boat raced out of their own building. That game was just terrible to watch from the Maryland side. Iowa just had a very, very good game. The final score ended up being 51-14. But like I said, this happens to Maryland, it seems like every single year.
Yeah, this one, it was kind of sad. It was not a good showing for them after a promising start to the season. But also, I would like to point out this Iowa team looks to be competing for a Big Ten championship. They are definitely one of the better teams in the Big Ten. They have handled business all year, and that defense has looked very good. I'm excited to see what they can do further down the line because they have looked great so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even go a step above Big Ten. I think they're competing for a playoff spot. They're obviously number 5 in the nation right now. I still think Ohio State ends up dropping another game on the season, and I don't really see Ohio State getting into the playoff, even with a Big Ten championship with 2 losses. So I definitely do think that this is a team that is competing for the playoff.
Yeah, I think Iowa definitely will represent the West. But the big question is, who of the East would they face? Because this one's kind of a jump ball right now. I think it will be Ohio State in the end, but you never know. Penn State, Michigan, they all have had great starts to the season. So I think at this point, it's just choosing an opponent for Iowa.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Let's move on to the NFL. Let's take a quick look back on the Thursday night game. The Bengals beat the Jaguars 24-21. I don't really know what to say. Urban Meyer looks like he's not long for the job. I think one of the key turning points in the game was, I believe it was near the end of the first half. Jaguars were like at 4th and 1 or 2, like at the 3-yard line. And instead of kicking the field goal to go up 3 scores, they go for it and don't get it. I think that was the big turning point in this game.
Yeah, that was a huge momentum shifter. The Jaguars were up 14-0, and the Bengals did not look like they had any answers on the offensive side of the ball. I do like the play call to go for it there, because if you get that 21-0 at halftime, you're sitting good. The 3 is the safe option, but I like going. You're that close. I like going for it. This second half, it was a different Bengals team. It truly was. The crowd got into it. Bengals had a hot start right out of halftime, and they were able to take control and then get the game-winning field goal at the end.
Yeah, I think this was, I wouldn't say it's the first game, but it is one of the first few games that really showed what Joe Burrow can be in the NFL. He looked really good in this game. I'd say Trevor Lawrence looked really good too. I mean, he went 17 for 24 for 204 yards. He didn't have a touchdown or interception, but he can be good. He just needs to get a halfway decent team around him.
Yeah, and I agree with what Joe Buck and Troy Aikman said. I think this game was the future of the NFL. I think in the next few years, as the Bengals and the Jaguars get better around themselves, these two are definitely going to be competing for playoff spots and potentially Super Bowls.
I really didn't take away much other from that game. So let's move on to the weekend slate. Let's start off with the 1 o'clock window tomorrow with Gus Johnson on the call. The Lions travel to Chicago to face the Bears with a team that does not know who their quarterback is.
Yeah, I think this game will actually be the first win of the Lions season. The Bears just have not looked good so far, and this Lions team has shown it can compete. In the first 3 weeks, the Lions have faced teams that are actually pretty good. So I think this is the first kind of easier game for the Lions, and I think they should be able to pull out the win. But of course, with the Lions, you never know. It seems like every week we get either ripped off or new records broken against us. So who knows?
Yeah, if this game goes sideways for the Bears, Matt Nagy needs to get fired. Uh, just him going out this week and saying that all three quarterbacks are an option this weekend, that was just like, I get that two of them are injured and that's what he was trying to say, but I mean, that dude, I don't know what he's doing. Um, but I think I wind up thinking that Nick Foles is starting for the Bears this weekend because that's just something that would happen. But I kind of do agree with you on this one that this might be the Lions' first win on the season. I believe it was last year. It was the first game after Patricia got fired. I believe they won that game at Soldier Field.
Yeah, I do not know how Matt Nagy still has a job right now. Big question in my mind. Be interesting to see how this one turns out.
So yeah, it will be interesting to see how this one plays out. Let's move on to another game in this 1 o'clock window. The Browns travel to Minnesota to face the Vikings. This will be a very interesting game. I think another big key to this game will be if Dalvin Cook plays, which it does seem like he will.
Yeah, I think this game is actually going to be a difficult game for the Browns to win. This Vikings offense looks really good. Kirk Cousins is having a great season so far. It'll be interesting to see if this Browns defense shows up to the form that they were in against the Bears, against a very good Vikings offense. But this Vikings defense does not look very good either. So this one, I think, in my mind, is kind of a toss-up. I think the Browns are the better team overall, but the Vikings will compete very well.
Yeah, I mean, no bias here, but I do think the Browns are the better team in this game, like you said. I think it will be interesting to see what Browns team shows up though, because if the same defense that played last week, which again we said we're not sure how much of it was that defense and how much of it was the Bears O line, but if that defense shows up again, yeah, I think this is going to be probably close to not a full blowout, but it won't be close because I mean the Browns just it seemed like they got to stop on every single drive. Um, I think the run game is going to be another big key for the Browns again this weekend. The return of OBJ, that's another big thing. We'll see if he can. He had a decent return, especially given that he hadn't played in 11 months. Uh, I but I do see this game being a lot closer and a lot more nerve wracking. Okay. Another game we want to talk about is the 425 window. It is the Steelers against the Packers. We already talked about both teams earlier in their recap from last week. Uh, I think it's not going to be a close game if Big Ben plays like he did last week.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do not think that the Steelers will be able to hang with this Packers offense. I mean, they just look too potent, and the Steelers can't put up points right now. This one's probably going to turn into an ugly game for Steelers, and I think the national media will be back on the Steelers' necks again next week.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything this year that shows that Big Ben will be any different than what he has been all year. So I think this end up being a Packers blowout. Uh, I do kind of think it does matter if TJ Watt plays. I don't know. I don't remember seeing anything about him not playing this week, but that Steelers defense looked really good week one, and then it kind of just fell off. I think that will be a big key on for this game is if that defense from the Steelers from week one shows up again.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too is a good defense can act as an offense, but when that said team does not have a good offense to begin with, that defense can only be so good until there's no point.
It's like you're exactly right on that. Good defense can be a decent offense basically. Uh but it will depend on which Steelers defense shows up today. One more game to talk about this, actually two more games to talk about this weekend. Uh let's talk about the game that everybody else is talking about. Buccaneers, Patriots, Tom Brady going back to New England. Uh this is I mean, I would venture to say this is going to be the biggest non-postseason game in NFL history. I will not be surprised if the ratings reflect that. I think this game is going to be a Super Bowl type atmosphere ish, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, ticket costs are reflecting the same way Super Bowls are. The cheapest ticket right now, I think, is like 1,200 bucks. That is absurd. But Tom Brady means so much to New England. People are willing to pay whatever to come see him and thank him, basically. That's what this game is. For some reason, the sports media keeps making it out that that Tom Brady and the Patriots had this bad ending and there's like a rivalry. I do not think that's the case whatsoever. I think Tom is very fond of his time with the Patriots, and he obviously won a ton. I think Bill Belichick is fond with his time, and I think they both just kind of knew that his time was up. And I don't really think there are these hard feelings that everyone seems to think there are.
Yeah, a lot of that came out of the from excerpts from the new book that is coming out, I believe, in a few weeks. It's Better to Be Feared by Seth Wickersham. It's just basically a book looking at the Patriots dynasty and its ending. Um, yeah, I think another big factor is it's going to be a Foxborough type night. I think it's supposed to be like 50 degrees and raining. Uh, that is basically New England in a nutshell, it seems. Obviously, Tom Brady has a ton of experience in that. And then I believe if he does win, he's beaten every team in the NFL, which is something I don't think a lot of people have accomplished.
Yeah, that I'm excited for this one. I think the Bucks do win it. I think Tom Brady will end up having a win against every NFL team now. And yeah, I this game is more fun just for the fact of the return, not so much the interest in the two teams. But I am also excited to see a full game of Mac Jones at quarterback because I've seen highlights every week of him, but I've not been able to see a full game of his. So I'm excited for that as well.
And then the last game on the weekend is the Monday night game. Raiders travel to LA to face the Chargers. This game, huge in the AFC West. Both teams coming into this game off big wins, basically. The Raiders coming off a win in overtime against the Dolphins, which, I mean, it doesn't mean much, but for the Raiders starting 3-0, that's huge. And then you have the Chargers coming off the huge win against the Chiefs. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up looking like a Raiders home game, given that the Raiders have a lot of history in LA. The Chargers don't really. This is just a huge game in the AFC West.
Yeah, both teams have had big wins against very good opponents to start the season off. I think both these teams are legit. The West is looking to be a toss-up right now because the Chiefs are going to bounce back. I think the Raiders will continue to do very well. And I also think the Chargers will do very well. So this one, I think, already has big playoff implications on it. If I had to take a team right now, I would take the Chargers over the Raiders. But like I said, I think the Raiders could definitely win this one. They've had a great start too. So this should be a really fun Monday Night Football game to watch.
Yeah, it's disappointing that the Manning cast isn't going to be on for this one, so we have to go back to the normal Monday night broadcast. But overall, this should be a very, very exciting game. Are there any other games you want to talk about in either college or pro this weekend?
No, I think we kind of covered everything. Let's see. Another good game, which we don't have to fully cover, but I'm excited for the Rams and the Cardinals. That one should be a good one. Both teams start off very well, so should be a good one.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I don't really have anything else. Well, that is it for this one. Thank you for watching. This did run a little bit longer than we wanted, but we got a lot of information out there. So hopefully you enjoyed. If you did stumble upon this, please like it. If you did like it, just we'll be back again.
Yes, we will.
We'll have another video. You might want to stick around and subscribe. You never know. Yeah, Zach, do you have any last words for the internet world?
The only thing I have to say is football.
Football. It's gonna be a long weekend of football.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Well, we're gonna head out here. So just thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you.